Okay, I kind of get that. But what I'd rather do is train ugly first and reduce the technique driven so that we're not so focused on the technique that we don't accomplish the end state.
Yeah.
I can say you qualify because qualification is a demonstration of technical proficiency. No more, no less. Once we can demonstrate technical proficiency, let's use all of that time for having fun. And we got to be careful about this because exhilaration feels fun. Anxiety doesn't feel fun.
Yeah.
If you're in an anxiety state, you have no access to forebrain processing, no capacity for creative problem solving. You're just going to stand there riveted, horrified, and that's not useful. From an
Yeah, great, Ken. And so, summarizing till now, so we talked about asking questions and the relationship with feedback, different forms of feedback, um, about where to start, with precision or with the raw stuff.
uh,
And well, we did so much. Um, can you please give us some insights for now, also about, because there I'm struggling with. Today I'm very involved in emergency medicine, and we do a lot
yes,
of simulation. I learned, by the way, a lot in emergency medicine about simulation training. Um, but I'm still struggling with what are intervention points in scenarios. I have to say it better, in scenarios. So traditionally, we in Holland, we developed a model where we said if they are good enough for the scenario, they had already their stuff good together, the technical, tactical, and so on. And we only we let them play the scenario, and afterwards we debrief. If not, if they're not freezing up, if they are not making deadly mistakes. But for the most part, we do not coach them in the scenario. This was, and I think we in medicine do the same right now. But what are intervention points? When do you say, now I'm going to ask questions, now I'm giving feedback?
why don't you coach them in the scenario? We need to figure out an individual,
Yeah.
and each individual has their own Tolley curve.
Hmm.
And I'm going to make sure that you've got the Tolley curve,
Hmm.
and make sure that you've already got the glossary. There's a few other things
Yeah.
that the red flags. I'll make sure that you have copies of those so you can post them. People will be able to download those things, or they can come to the RBTA website and get them. But depends on where they are with each skill and with each skill set. Where is that individual? Are they at crawl, walk, run, or assess? The crawl actually takes up more than 50% of the amount of time spent.
Hmm.
Then we start to move to the walk, and if we were to, it's an XY axis on all of this, but if you were to imagine, the XY, that
Hmm.
this is the amount of time that we have. This is where we're trying, this is our end state.
Hmm.
And we can do that with programs, we can do it with individual skill sets, with all of that. But this is where we want to end up. This is where we start. And this is how we get there. And so this part of it is crawl, which means we slow the F down. Then we get into walk, which is about maybe 25%. Run, we've got maybe 15%. And then assess
Hmm.
is the much smaller thing, but it's in the assess where they go from 50% capacity all the way up to 80%. Ooh, 80%, Ken? Why do we stop at 80%? Because now it's time to level up. Where do we stop with weightlifting? When we get 8 to 10 reps, we need to put more resistance
Yeah.
on the bar, right? And so with each individual, as I'm seeing people move through some skill sets, I'm a huge fan of what I call collaborative learning,
Hmm.
especially at the crawl and walk phase. So let's say we're looking at a medical intervention,
Yeah.
utilize your example. And
Yeah,
there's
and
something,
by the way, Ken, I've worked with teams. Maybe that makes a difference. Yeah, there
yeah,
are many people involved in the simulation.
yeah. Well, and then the question comes down is what are you looking at?
Yeah.
Right? How have they built their team model. When you start looking at a fire team in military, for example, you got
Yeah.
5 guys, and each one of those 5 people have a specific role,
Yeah.
but they needed to learn that specific role before you dumped them into a team.
Yeah.
If you've got a squad assault weapon guy,
Yeah.
um, and you've never taught him to use the squad assault weapon, you can't just say it's your turn to be the squad assault. Hey, a football player, your turn to be the kicker today, but I don't know how to kick. Doesn't matter. It's your turn.
But
And so,
when to intervene? Because yeah.
well, the intervention points are unnatural pause,
Mhm.
goofy loop, or a meltdown, and I'll define what those things are. Something is happening, and then there's nothing happening. They're just going, uh, in radio, we call it dead air.
Yeah.
There's dead air. So during that unnatural pause, I press the pause button. And what I'm talking about a pause in everything,
Mhm.
where I'm going, pause. And I go, okay, so what are you thinking right now? Um, I know I need some information for this, but I'm just trying to figure out what it is. Okay, so what do we know about this guy right now? Well, that he's got a very high pulse rate and it's low. Okay, and what else have we discovered? We got a lot of blood coming out here. Okay, so knowing that he's got a really, really low pulse rate, low blood pressure, and he's got a lot of blood coming out here, what is that indicative of? We've got an arterial bleed. Ah, okay. So what do we need to do right now? What are our priorities of life right now? We need to find and stop that bleed. Okay, so what indicators do we have as to what the bleed is right here? Okay, well, it's kind of looking like coming over here. So what do we need to do? What in order for us to truly know that, what's useful? I got to cut that guy's pants over. Are you asking me or telling me? I'm telling you, I got to cut those pants off. All right. And once we cut the pants off, what do we need to? Well, if I see the bleed, I need to stop
Yeah.
with the tourniquet. Okay, back to you.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's a person sort of at the crawl phase. They might have
Yeah.
seen tourniquet stuff and they might have seen a little video on that, but they're in state right now
Yeah.
and they haven't been able to put into context the thing that they know.
Yeah.
And so maybe they've got retention. Maybe they don't know anything about arterial bleeds. Maybe they missed that day because they had to step out because they've got a family problem and they had to take a family call for 2 hours on the phone. They came back and they missed that whole thing. Right? So we will know by asking questions if they know what they're supposed to do and aren't doing it, or they don't know because they haven't learned it.
Mm.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's an unnatural pause will
Yeah.
give us an indicator that we might
Yeah.
need to get it wrong. A goofy loop, doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. They've got a tourniquet on the limb and they're cranking and cranking and cranking and cranking and cranking and cranking, but the blood's not stopping. And it should be with that amount of cranks. Well, what are we thinking right now? I'm putting the tourniquet on the guy, but he's still bleeding. Okay, so what does that tell us?
Yeah.
Is the tourniquet working or is it not working? It doesn't seem to be working. And why do you think that is? And then I didn't cut the pants open and I put the tourniquet on too low. So I put the tourniquet on below the severed artery, not above the severed artery. Ah, isn't that interesting? Back to you. I don't allow them to feel stupid.
Yeah.
Anytime they feel stupid, they're just going to go into a non-resource state,
Yeah.
right? I don't know if you remember the movie Catch Me If You Can. It was with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks,
No.
and he was a con man,
Hmm.
and he kept pretending to be things, and he pretended to be a doctor. He talked himself into the chief of emergency medicine at
Mm.
a hospital. He didn't know anything about medicine. He'd been reading these medical textbooks, but he's now the chief of the rotations for all of these interns that are in. And
Oh.
so he goes down into the ER and there's something going on with this patient. And he goes, Dr. Smith, what are your thoughts on this? Oh, I think this is what I'm seeing. And because he'd seen an episode of a TV show, he asked another doctor, he goes, do you concur? Um, um, Dr. Jones, do you concur? Um, um, Dr. Jensen, do you concur? I concur. And the other, why didn't I concur? Why didn't I concur? Why feel stupid?
Yeah.
Right? But this is the whole thing. And so In the Temple of Awesome, I do not allow people to feel stupid. I'll take them out of the moment, have them look from an external perspective of the thing that they're trying to accomplish, and I'll find out if they know what they're supposed to do and aren't doing it, or never got taught the things that they should be
Yeah.
doing and haven't learned that, right?
Yeah.
And the last one is a meltdown.
Yeah.
Meltdowns can be physiological, psychological, or technological,
Yeah.
right? So here's the tourniquet thing. They're cranking and cranking and cranking, and it's not working, and they're melting down. This should be working, and it's in place, and it's the right thing, and I know I'm supposed to be doing the right thing. So they start to have a little bit of an emotional meltdown. We press the pause button. What's
Yeah.
going on right now? I've got a busted tourniquet. You
Yeah.
sure did. Is that your fault? No. Is it your obligation to recognize that? Yes. And what did you just do? You went into a non-resource state and kept doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, shooting somebody over and over and over again
Yeah.
without having the end state result of stopping the threat. What's going on? I keep hitting them. Is the threat being stopped? No. How come? Body armor. All right, back to you.
Yeah.
And then they start thinking about the headshot. But those are the
Yeah.
intervention points.
Great.
Or genuine
Yeah.
curiosity. I'll press the pause button when I'm genuinely curious about something.
Where did you develop that? Where did you develop this? I'm trying to find words for it. It reminds me of client-centered therapy from Carl Rogers. Also, the humanistic tradition.
It's a heuristic that I developed.
Yeah, but you seem all those words you use, like
Mhm.
being curious, keeping them in resource state, not letting them feel stupid. It
Mhm.
seems almost contradictory to the knucklehead trainers. What is it in you that you seem to be so interested in the succeeding of the student? Yeah, it seems a stupid question if I ask it, because why not? But what is his
Because
basic philosophy?
I was never immersed organizationally and learned the I'll park that for a second and ask you a question. You have a daughter.
Yeah,
So how many children do you have?
two.
Okay, where did you get your parenting degree?
At the University of Parenting. No, I didn't. I admit I have no certificate. I was
You
illegal.
have no formal training in
No.
parenting, and you are responsible for the lives of two other people. Well, certainly your parents. Your parents were educated in parenting, were they not? Where did they get their parenting degree?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I have to ask them. I don't think so. They have them, sir.
They don't have one. It's a
Mm,
copy of a copy of a copy.
yeah.
Where did most people learn how to teach people to use firearms? From their firearms instructor,
Yeah.
who learned from their firearms instructor, who learned from their firearms instructor, who have been utilizing outdated, outmoded, stand on the line methodologies for years that teach nothing about winning gunfight. Now, this is a very broad brush,
Yeah.
by the way. It's a
Yeah.
very broad brush
Yeah. Of
because there
course.
are some amazing firearms
Yeah.
programs out there and some amazing firearms trainers, and those aren't the ones that I'm talking
No.
about.
Oh no.
I'm talking about the state organizations that still have qualification as the gold standard, and in many instances have no connectivity to the end state of gunfighting, right? Because they need to empirically, driven by academics, state that I can show a score on a target and say that I've trained them to hit this many bullseyes with this many shots in this amount of time so that I can say that you're qualified. But anytime I travel the world and I ask people how many people believe qualification is a good demonstration of gunfight proficiency, no hands go up. And yet, why are we still doing it? And so your question is great. Why are we still doing it? And because I wasn't in the military and I wasn't a law enforcement officer, I always thought that I would be. But I had a technology that was the ultimate backstage pass to experiential learning and to see what people were actually doing with this stuff. I looked at it and go, why are you doing that?
Mm,
That doesn't teach us anything about gunfighting. Why are we shredding people? Why are we humiliating people?
yeah.
And from a therapeutic background, I've been studying NLP for the past
Yeah.
4 decades. And
Yeah.
and through all of that, they studied some of the best therapists. That
Yeah.
you had Milton Erickson,
Yeah.
who was one of the best hypnotists in the world, and
Yeah.
Virginia Satir, and Fritz Perls,
Yeah.
and all these people that intuitively studied how to optimize human behavior. And so I just was able to apply all of these optimization strategies in my own training and notice that it worked.
What
And
is the
then
what is the value of NLP training? And by the way, as a psychologist, I love NLP. By so that so
good.
yeah. But and I'm even more interested in hypnosis. But that's maybe another topic. But you have several terms which sounds NLP like. But what has NLP given you? And if you are, for example, a law enforcement trainer, you have some hours left. Would it be worthwhile to study NLP?
Well, and there are some good NLP trainers and some bad NLP trainers. I work with an organization here in Orlando called Pure NLP, shameless plug, and they are directly connected to Richard Bandler.
Mm-hmm.
And so Richard is probably going to be here maybe tonight. They do training schools here in Orlando a couple of times a year, and then travel all over the world. And so I like going to the Fountainhead. In my early training with NLP, I studied with John Grinder and
Mm.
got involved with Richard Bandler and the folks he was training. And so I really was curious about hypnosis
Ah, also, yeah.
because if you can have some guy that you don't know on top of a stage bring some strangers up onto
Yeah.
the stage and for entertainment purposes have them doing things that appear outlandish, then I was curious, is this just parlor tricks or if it's real? Because if it's real, then we need to be really, really cautious because as trainers, we are hypnotists.
Yeah.
When you look at the things that you need as a hypnotist prior to trance state, you need authority, prestige. So what's the best way to get prestige? Have somebody else say, "Oh, that guy over there, he's a hypnotist." You need to be able to bypass the critical factor and get into the bypass their ability to filter things out, and then you need their undivided attention.
Yeah.
Anton Mesmer, who is one of the
Oh, yeah.
grandfathers, basically said, I wish I hadn't called it hypnosis. I wish I would have called it monoideaism.
Yeah.
But when you've got these young kids getting yelled at for order and discipline, you have their attention, you have prestige, you're bypassing that critical factor. And so now we as trainers need to be really, really cautious what experiential minds because we get one shot at it. In Training at the Speed of Life, I talk about positive phobias,
Mm.
right? This single one shot, powerful, compelling learning thing that we learn once and never have to learn for the rest of our lives. If
Yeah.
you're afraid of bees, because you didn't come onto the planet scared of bees. The four things that we're scared of systemically, limbically: loud noises, sudden approach, falling, and smothering. Those are the four things that a baby will respond to with no knowledge of the planet. And so everything else that we associate with fear, I think the Canadian or American Inuit have 37 different words for snow,
Mm.
but we've got one word for fear. And
Yeah.
so it's a really bad utilization
Yeah.
of that word, right? But if we associate, I'm afraid of this little yellow stinging thing, then you don't have to go back for B fear recurrency training. Remember we talked about belief
Yeah.
systems, ideas stabilized by an
Yeah.
emotion? Well, mommy was afraid of bees. Mommy overwhelmingly with her emotion protected us from this thing that we now can we associate with danger. We don't have to go back for beef for recurrency training every
And
day.
how does it work how is this conditioning working in police training? I'm trying to come up with some examples. There are a lot of officers in Holland who are afraid to come up to the firearms testing because they have failed.
Yep,
Or
because
maybe, yeah,
they have failed.
yeah,
You just nailed it. Because they have failed. Why did they fail? That's the trainer's problem. We're utilizing these broken, outdated models to give them their primacy and recency experience with a gun. And in the Netherlands, they're not gun people.
No,
Unless they grew up on a farm where they went and shot something for food, there's not a huge recreational gun community,
no,
right?
absolutely
And
not.
so the gun is a big scary thing. Not only is the gun a big scary thing, but we make it such a big scary thing that we don't often allow our people to carry one. In fact, we've got specialized units that are allowed to carry one. And now we take this big scary thing, we put it in their hands, we yell at them, we put them shoulder to shoulder. We're loud noises, sudden approach, falling and smothering, right? Does a gun make a loud noise?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Does the slide come back at our
Bang.
face as we're
Yeah.
looking at it? Sudden approach, smothering. There's our firearms instructor, horrified himself, standing over our shoulder and holding onto our arm and scolding us when we even move the plane of that firearm left or right or up or down. Yes, the only thing we're not doing is dropping them off a 6-foot wall to activate all of our limbically system hardwired
Yeah.
fears. And so I talk about the whee meter versus the wham meter, exhilaration versus anxiety. A book that I'm writing that I need to finish is called The Art of Pretending, and it's
Yeah.
told through the eyes of my grandchildren.
Hmm.
And so, in The Art of Pretending, there's rules of things that if you're going to utilize pretend as a useful model for practicing future behavior, rule number one is don't be mean.
Hmm.
I say something other than that. Don't be an a-hole, right? But
Hmm.
rule
Yeah.
number one is don't be mean, right? That we need to gently move people past the otherwise scary experience to give them exhilaration.
Yeah.
In their mind, their meter is sitting at normal level. And as soon as something, our sympathetic nervous system begins to get involved, which is a rheostat, not an on-off switch. So we're turning up the stress just a little bit. We start to go wee, or we start to go wah, right? It depends on how they're processing these
Yeah.
things. We as trainers must calibrate, another NLP term. We must calibrate our student.
What is that? What
And
does calibration mean?
well, calibration means that we need to understand that as the fear comes in, fear is a normal physiological reaction to danger.
Hmm.
Absolutely normal. And it you will never be paralyzed by fear. Fear is that and that mobilization state where we start to get start to feel that electrifying moment. How we process that, what we believe about that, is going to determine whether it's exhilaration or anxiety.
Hmm.
If we start to go to exhilaration, it feels fun. Whee! If we start to go to anxiety, it doesn't feel fun. Wah! If we start to see them going down the wah meter, we need to pause them.
Yeah.
You see somebody sitting back on their chair a little bit and they're trying to find the balance point, and all of a sudden they start going, whoa, 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 like that, trying to catch their balance because their vestibular system
Yeah.
is out of whack. There's no value in letting them fall on their head.
No.
None.
So NLP is useful because of we went to hypnosis and the state's very, very quick, but
We
can
need
you
to
please
utilize trance state. When people are in training, they're in trance state.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely in trance state. And so we need trance
Why?
utilization.
Please tell me why again. Why are they in trance state? Because we how do you call it? We have
We
prestige,
spend
we
80% of our
bypass.
life in trance.
Sorry, not what?
We spend 80% of our life in trance. We're in trance right
Yeah.
now. You viewers right now are in trance.
Yeah.
And if they don't believe they're in trance, I want them to ignore this for a second and listen to the sounds in their house
Yeah.
or their office. There's lots of stuff going on out there
Yeah.
that they were absolutely not aware of
Yeah.
because their reticular activating system said,
Yeah.
pay attention to this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. And so they're in trance. Our
Yeah.
job is trance utilization.
Hmm.
And we get to choose to send them either to whee or whan.
Yeah.
Right. And so we need exhilarating. We need to put the fun into fundamentals. And your people are coming, the general, you
Yeah.
said, our people are coming to training and they're horrified because they failed in the training. So they're horrified about qualification, but because they failed in training. Well, that's our fault.
Yeah.
That's our fault. We need to make it fun. One of the organizations I worked with in Canada, one of their high-end military groups, had an officer candidate that they wanted within their organization, but for whatever reasons they had at the time, they had to pass the shooting standards, even though this person would never be operational. And so they tried several of their firearms instructors that just could not get this person through the standards. And so one of the trainers that had been through my program said, you know what, I'm going to channel my inner Ken Murray. I'm going to take away the big bang guns. I'm going to take them with either airsoft pistols or 22s, whatever they did. They took away the big bang and they took away all of the scary things,
Hmm.
and they put them 3 feet from the target.
Yeah.
And they shot all of the standards from 3 feet and said, look, that so you can do this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it, we're done. Oh, no, we're not done. But that's the standard that we need to be able to meet. And if you can do it from here, can you do it from here? And if you can do it from here, you can do it from there. And they started moving a little bit. And then they knew when the person was full, because now they're leaning in, they're exhilarated by this. This is fun now.
Yeah.
And I said, can we go further? No, we can't. Now you need to go get some rest. The
Yeah.
consolidation phase needs to occur, right? Let's go do something fun that's not related to the thing that we're doing, because a little bit of fun disconnected to the thing that we're trying to learn
Yeah.
is actually keeps the brain going. But we also need to have a sleep cycle within 6 hours of the thing that we learned, or it falls out the back of the turn. That's what the brain sciences teach
Yeah.
us. So that's good. So then we had some consolidation time. The offline learning occurred, and now we can make it a little bit more complex. Now, when it comes to shooting the bigger gun,
Hmm.
now we just put some blindfold on you. Now I want you to feel what that gun feels like. I want you to shoot a bunch of rounds. Bang, 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 bang. Ah, did you notice that it starts to move you around a little bit? Yeah. So now all I want you to do is I want you to just start working on controlling the gun. You're never going to control the recoil. It's an explosive device in your hand. We can manage the recoil. So our job is to manage that recoil back into a place in space where our body begins to feel where that gun needs to be. Then we can start looking down the gun.
Yeah.
For most of the gunfight stuff that we're doing, especially in law enforcement, 10 feet is where about 90% of our gunfights occur. We just know that to be true. But if people are so scared that they're doing this in a gunfight because
Yeah.
they're not dialed in or moving to a position of advantage, is replacing that firearm into a spatial location that lines up the barrel bore axis with the thing that we're shooting, and be mindful of the fact that whatever we're shooting is either going to keep doing something to cause us to shoot us in the first place, or not doing that, at which point we stop shooting them, move to position of advantage, go through our 4C checklist. There's a lot there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can get you to that really, really quickly if we STFD at the beginning.
Yeah.
Make it early context reference. So there's early contextual relevance to the thing that we're doing. We start having a little bit of fun. Jeff Quayle he gave it a name. That's great.
Yeah.
The gun sparring, we've been talking about that in low level drills forever. And I'm glad that people are doing this now, because it matters that we need to start doing that fun stuff.
Yeah.
And just get away from, in the book, we talk about a one-shot qualification. Frank Repass, who was with Orlando PD at the beginning, then he moved on to Kennedy Space Center. He was I think, one of the vice presidents of International Association of Law Enforcement Firearms Instructors. He was doing the one-shot qualification. What he's able to prove with that, from a ready gun position in a second and a half, raising the gun and shooting a 15-inch plate at 10 feet, I think it was. Ding. What that tells me is all of the mechanics of holding a gun and moving the trigger without moving the gun exist.
Yeah.
Now I can say you qualify, because qualification is a demonstration of technical proficiency. No more, no less. Once we can demonstrate technical proficiency, let's use all of that time for having fun. And we got to be careful about this, because exhilaration feels fun. Anxiety doesn't feel fun.
Yeah.
If you're in an anxiety state, you have no access to forebrain processing, no capacity for creative problem solving. You're just going to stand there riveted, horrified, and that's not useful. From an
Yeah.
exhilaration flow state, now we can think our way through gunfights. When we teach in this way, someone who has no idea what we're doing is not going to bring the ethical piece into it. And they're saying they're teaching them they're teaching them to have fun while they're shooting human beings. That's reprehensible. That's not what we're doing. We are not teaching people to have fun shooting human beings. We're teaching people to have an exhilarating experience instead of anxiety producing, and it's connected to a job requirement.
Yeah.
Shooting people with firearms is part of a job requirement of an armed service individual. It just is. Is that our go-to? Is that our first choice? No, but it's one of the options that we're giving to our defenders, and they'd better be good at it.
And be
And
better
part of
be
that,
good by it is by being not anxious.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
good at it by being
Yeah.
not anxious.
Yeah.
And
Great.
by being not anxious, the likelihood of having to use that gun is a lot lower
Yeah. Great.
because we're making better decisions about whether to talk, fight, shoot, or leave. But when we've got people who are horrified
Yeah.
because they've never had an experience with the decisive engagement utilizing a firearm, they're going to choose that option at a level that they shouldn't be choosing that option and using it in an inappropriate way because they're horrified about somebody standing there gesturing with a knife.
And Ken, to conclude this part, um, so in giving this kind of training, NLP and all its methods are of good use. Is that what you're saying? To
Oh, absolutely.
calibrate, to understand. Yeah.
If you don't understand the behavior of people down to the finer resolution
Yeah.
of finding out what they're doing and why they're doing it without asking them why they're doing it. This is the artistic nature of the language. Why is the essence of what we're trying to accomplish. Asking why is the antithesis because you're going to take them out of resource state.
Yeah.
And that takes training and practice.
Yeah. Well, we have some 20 minutes left, and I have
Oh
so
boy.
many questions, and we did not even touch about safety, which is a huge part of your work. But so just let us decide on the spot, eh? Because I have many, how you call it, many random questions, so to speak. I will give a few. You don't need to answer them, but then you have an ID. That is, for example, yeah, what do you think about science? Because today there is a lot of science, and for especially about motor learning. Is that something new, or is it something you have done all along the way? That's one of the questions. Another question I have is about training for catastrophic events. In Holland, there are people who say you have to prepare for that event, which maybe not happen. And there are other people who say, no, we should practice the common things. So these are some questions, but also the 4C protocol, the Temple of Alberson. There are a lot of short questions, which seems to me very fun. That's a way to go. But yeah, of course, safety is also very important. It's all important, of course. What makes your heart beat faster? What kind of questions?
Makes my heart beat faster is and not in a good way, is showing up in a training site where lackluster safety protocols
Yeah.
are in place, and someone says big boy rules.
What
You
are
know,
big
they
boy rules? What are big
yeah,
boy rules?
well, there it's a conversational construct that presupposes that everybody has a safety mindset, and so therefore everyone is in charge of their own safety and would not in a million years bring a dangerous thing into a training area. And yet utilizing those big boy rules has been the epicenter of the carnage that has occurred in scenario based training. Again, two a year, and over the past 18 months we've had 12
Can you
shootings, six fatalities.
can you give an example of what's going wrong on the big boy rules in training? Is there
Sure,
yeah.
sure. The presupposition that people can handle their own safety without the necessity of someone standing watch. There was a shooting down in Miami with United States Customs and Border Patrol where they were sharing training space with um, a civilian range. And if you needed to use the restroom, you'd have to leave the secure area, rearm yourself by their protocols, because you wouldn't walk through as a uniformed officer. You would not walk into a civilian area without a pistol on your hip,
Mm,
understandably.
yeah.
And so people would leave and come back, and there wouldn't be another physical safety check of coming back because they thought that they were just leaving. I've got protocols that would address that. I've got banding systems. I've got safety searches that go on. The safety searches are thorough, but respectful of the fact that we're not searching someone like they're putting them in a jail cell. We can't keep guns out of prisons. If somebody wants to sneak a firearm into a scenario-based area, there's nothing we can do to stop that. But I've never, ever in the history of doing this heard an example of somebody doing that deliberately.
No.
It's the inadvertent portage of firearms backwards and forwards, and the compression of time where somebody just needs to run out and do something. There was people left the area, came back into the area. There may have been an end of day thing that was going on where some people made the presumption that training was over and had rearmed themselves because they didn't have end of day training protocols. All sorts of things weave into this. And if you don't have a program that has unviolable safety protocols in place, followed to the letter by dedicated safety staff, safety officer does not play. They've got a single job. They are there to filter the flow inward and outward, making sure that no live weapons are getting into the training area and that no training items are going back into the real world.
Yeah.
It sounds simple, but simple isn't easy. Simple implies a lack of complexity. Easy implies a lack of effort. And to be effortful as a safety officer is boring.
Yeah.
We don't have the people for that. We should be able to find ourselves in a safe location and search people once, and then that safety officer can go and do something else. Bang, dead.
Yeah.
Right? And so
So what
it's,
happened? What happened in this particular scenario?
I don't know 100%. What I do know is a trainer shot another trainer.
Yeah.
Because there was the introduction of a live firearm, and I think there was let's do that one more time instance to it. That certainly happened with Calgary Police years ago. Chris Butler from the Trainer's Bullpen, great trainer. They had Darren Beatty, one of their SWAT guys, that there was a confusion about the end of training and some people had rearmed themselves. And hey, let's do that one more time, and grab Darren. And he went in, and one of the guys had already gunned up. There was a PPCT recertification that happened in Montana, I think it was. Todd Wagner. They'd had 2 days of PPCT recertification where they'd search people in the beginning of the day, but they were using their conventional firearms with no engineering device that would stop them from reloading. And they had all of their gear around the periphery of the classroom. And so towards the back half of the second day, somebody had, the break was given. Hey, I'm going to go upstairs and get your written test ready. A question was, are we done with our firearms? Well, we still need to do spontaneous knife defense. Nebulous question, nebulous answer, and 3 people went and reloaded, and they could because all of their gear was just sitting around the side of the classroom. There was no defined end of day training protocols that would say training is over and rearming in a methodical way. And so one of the spontaneous knife defense was, you and I are going to partner up, and I'll come at you with a rubber knife, and you're going to draw your pistol and shoot me off the end of your gun, and then we'll swap around. And one of the guys had already reloaded. 3 of the guys actually already reloaded. So one of the guys that had reloaded said to his partner, Todd Wagner, hey, I've already reloaded, okay? So I'm just going to use my finger gun. Okay. And then instead of that pair was fine, but one of the other guys who reloaded, now came the rubber knife, and now came the real gun, shot him dead. And so
Yeah. It's so
These
easy.
big boy rules
Yeah.
give the latitude for people within the training environment to make safety decisions on their own. And then as a hypnotist, you know that a pattern interruption is something that we do deliberately to bypass the critical factor, and then the mind that goes off in another direction.
Yeah.
Pattern interruptions are very real. Pattern interruptions are the things that you do where you lose your keys on your desk. Pattern interruptions are the thing that will cause a woman to put her baby in a bassinet on top of her car, answer her cell phone, and then get in the car and drive away with the baby on the roof, right? These things happen all the time.
Yeah.
Pattern interruptions, we we have them happen to us, and distraction. You've seen the hidden gorilla experiment,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Dan Moss, I think it is,
Yeah.
who basketball players
Yeah.
passing black shirts and white shirts. The pattern interruption is pay attention to the white shirts. And so the black shape that goes across is selectively attentioned out, and you don't see a gorilla stand in the middle of all of these basketball players, then walk out.
And I think besides the numbers you gave, which are shocking, here in Holland we have had some incidents, real incidents, but not that. But I have had in my own, for example, we used ammo safe, the yellow.
Yes,
We used ammo safe in our real guns, and then they went with their real guns into the dojo, their whole how do you call it? Their whole waist band with all the stuff. And I thought I had a system, and we were with two instructors, and then they were practicing self defense techniques without even the firearm was not necessary at all. But then I saw a police officer who got to his gun and out of the holster and putting it on another other officer, and I was lucky enough to see there was no yellow, there was no ammo safe in it.
yes.
And
And that's your
luckily,
you
I'm
were
so
trained to notice that, you see. You
yeah,
your eye system. Now, my guess is that you did not go to the next level that I suggest, that your gun, we got color codes. The
yeah,
Railway Training Association has color codes. And what you've done is you've taken a conventional firearm and rendered it temporarily
yeah,
incapable of firing ammunition. That's condition green. So
mm,
with condition green, we've got the ammo safe in the barrel, but I've also got green tape around the butt of the gun.
mm,
So I would have immediately, before that gun came out of the holster,
yeah,
been able to look around and see that's a conditioned black gun. That's a live firearm.
yeah,
So I would have picked that up before the gun came out of the holster, but at least your eyes picked it up.
yeah. But I saw it. I still feel terrified with what could happen. I mean, and there were other incidents like that in the training through the years. If I'm looking back now, where we were just fucking lucky.
Yes, we get into this business with
Yeah,
zero experience and a bag full of luck.
yeah,
Our job is to fill up the bag with experience before we run out of luck.
yeah,
Every single year, I'm still taking pieces of luck out of my bag.
yeah,
We're at a training site here where we're training for some vehicle stuff outside, and we're at a shopping mall.
yeah.
And all of a sudden, they're just 30 feet from us. This car comes screaming into where we are, and this other car comes in and runs into this car. It's a crazy girl chasing her boyfriend, and it almost turns into a what the heck is this? And so we've got police vehicles right there, and one of our guys immediately hopped in. He's got his car was running because he was a canine guy, and he hopped into the car and chased this fleeing hit and run person,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden training stopped.
Yeah,
And so we need to have a process for that. Stop, stop, stop. And as the chaos is being managed, we have to have a process for that. We had a SWAT call out. We just in Kansas City, I think it was, we were just getting ready for our third set of scenarios. It was the second day in scenario day, and we got the teams getting all of their gear, and all of the SWAT pagers went off. And so all the SWAT guys needed to switch from training stuff
Yeah.
to SWAT guy stuff for this call out. And everybody now wants to go fast.
Yeah.
And I'm going, slow down, stop, stop, stop. You guys have been working with your operational M4s, and now they've been temporarily rendered incapable because they've got conditioned blue bolts in them. And now we got to deliberately, mindfully take those blue bolts out and make sure the ammo that's in your guns are that, and take your tags off. And we've got to have a process for this
Yeah.
because you're going into a dangerous space with dangerous stuff, and we
Yeah.
got to have a process for that. Most agencies don't, because we got big boy rules, and certainly they're going to be able
Yeah.
to handle that on their own. No, training matters, processes matter.
Yeah.
If you don't have these procedures in place, then people get killed.
And Ken, do you have some stuff, of course, your book, but do you have some stuff on your website or something else where police trainers and maybe even officers can look at for some safety rules or whatever, or is it just in your
Yeah.
book? Is that enough?
Yeah, well, the book is it's 20 years old. And so there's a lot of stuff in there, but there's a lot of stuff that's not in there. The glossary is not in
Yeah.
there. The red flags is not in there. The color codes are in there to a certain extent, but now we've decided to overlap.
Hmm.
The Federal Aviation Association, the World Aviation Association, has airspace.
Hmm.
And so, as a pilot, if you're going into certain classes of airspace, there's certain measures in place. We've done the same thing with the RBTA. We've got Class A space, Class B space, and Class G space. So we actually use the FAA airspace classifications. For anybody that's familiar with those, it maps. Class A space is the most controlled airspace, other than the stuff in outer space with
Hmm.
NASA. But Class A space, we've got the rules. Class A space is where we can interact with each other. And so we've got different conditions, safety conditions in there. Condition blue, if we've got all the protective gear on, we can shoot at each other with projectiles. Condition yellow, we can use blanks and we can lower the protective gear. Condition purple is for laser beams. And condition green is we can utilize, it's like an inert gun. Condition red is inert guns. And so all of these things nest. If we've got all of the personal protective gear to be doing condition blue, then any of these other technologies are permissible within condition blue space, but it doesn't go the other way.
Yeah.
If we're only protected to condition yellow, then we can't shoot projectiles at each other. If we're only got the personal protective gear for condition red, we can use condition green and condition red because they're essentially inert guns. But we need to be mindful of those conditions. Class B space is all of the dangerous things. That's where we need controlled environments to be shooting dangerous and potentially deadly projectiles. And so we've got, condition black, which is regular guns, condition gray, which is unhardened structure target ammunition, condition white, which is a type of projectile that's going to shoot frangible ammunition, is
Yeah.
within that space. And so there's all of these different color codes and conditions within there. We're in Class G space right now. Class G is the wild, wild west. And when people show up for training, I don't care what they've got on them. In my classroom, I don't have a live weapon, right? It's a dangerous world out there. But if we're going to be manipulating training devices, we need to go through a protocol to take us from Class G into Class A space.
And if
And
you
then
are a European law enforcement instructor or even a military firearms instructor, how can they get in contact with this stuff? Is it they have to, of course they can go to the States to follow a course, but are there
if
other options?
any Europeans, yeah, I've run courses in Europe.
Are you running courses in Europe also? Yeah.
If you build a course, I'll show up.
Ah, okay.
Courses in various European countries and in the Australian. I was going back and forth to Australia for about 5 years. Up in Canada, I was working up in Canada. So if you build it, he will come.
Yeah.
It's about the same price as what you pay for a science school,
Yeah.
uh, depending on the number of people that we're going to put in. It's a little bit more expensive to Europe because it's a little bit costlier to get to and stay in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Um, but we'd be happy to run courses there. And I need to add a couple of links to the website, but I'm pretty sure that by the time this podcast is live, I'll have some of the other things like the classes of space and the color codes and
Oh,
more.
great. Yeah.
I'll have that available. That if you go to the rbta.net, not .com,
Yeah.
rbta.net, net, and go into the information pull down, then you'll be able to find these things.
Yeah, that's great. I will put it I will put it on to the show notes and so on.
Excellent.
Ken, is there anything I forgot to ask you? Yeah, of course, a lot, but just for the
I
moment.
guess the thing you forgot to ask me is when am I coming back? Because you've got a
Yeah.
lot of great short questions, but unfortunately, I'm not good at short answers. There's so
Yeah.
much context that's required for
Yeah,
these.
of course, of course.
Yeah,
yeah, but there was so much dwells into it. Um, yes,
yeah. I think the big thing is trainers. This is a great big kettle of fish,
yeah,
and if you want to do this type of training, there's a lot that a lot of agencies need to learn. If you're already doing this type of training, there's a lot of things you don't know. So in many ways, you're unconsciously incompetent to a lot of the safety needs, both physically and emotionally, in that we need to spend a lot more time in the dynamic and Socratic facilitation of
hmm
our students because they're leaving you.
yeah,
We need to know that what they're leaving with is what I call 6 o'clock news ready. And what that means is that if there was a camera crew following you around and you do something in the talking, fighting, shooting, or leaving space, that the things you're doing are the one that your organization, society want to go, yeah, that one. That's what I want to see. If your training is not 6 o'clock news ready, then you're not finished yet.
yeah,
And so less is more when it comes to this stuff because we are truly failing at the basics. We should be talking when we should be talking, fighting when we should be fighting, shooting when we should be shooting, and leaving when we should be leaving, with a full understanding of whatever we do is either going to work, not work, kind of work, or work then be overcome. And so we need to be creating little scenario based experiences to be testing all of those things.
yeah,
And we need to slow down at the front end so that we can speed up on the back end. If they start to struggle, if we've got a gun at somebody and then the person does something consistent with don't point a pistol at them, what do we do? Do we put our pistol away? Do we continue to point a pistol because they did something threatening? How do we begin to communicate with the people around us? What's the information? What's our end state? And so when we start writing any experiential learning, we start with the end state, then we create contextual triggers that should precipitate that end state. Then we provide the training so that we have the correct tools and techniques that when the contextual triggers are fired, we get to that end state and then we train our role
yeah.
players to be the stimulus model within those contextual trigger states. And there's 7 different levels of role player that we'll talk about a whole nother
Yeah,
time.
yeah, I would love to. Yeah, that's such a
Yeah,
great. Yeah,
there's a lot to be in a role
yeah,
player. Your role player is your linchpin to success or failure in
yeah,
scenario-based training. And most people call somebody up the night before the training
yeah,
occurs and
yeah.
give them a little 3-line 3x5 card that they're supposed to follow. Not
So
optimal.
no, that's not. So 6 o'clock news ready if I leave
Yep.
the training center, and if you are a beginning law enforcement trainer or an experienced law enforcement trainer, what are some books or movies or podcasts, whatever, some inspiring things to read, listen, or watch, in your opinion,
Wow.
besides
Methods
your
of
book?
yeah,
Yeah,
I get to one of my schools. So we take all of the stuff that's taught
yeah,
by the brain scientist people, and we've been doing it organically for the
yeah,
past 30, 40 years. But now, because as soon as I learned that there were there were academic papers and schools I could go to that are giving scientific validation to the things that I'm doing. Now I have to level up. And
Yeah.
so now I've gone to the schools and I've read the papers. And so I'm a little bit more deliberate about utilizing the terminology that science has said we're doing.
Yeah.
And that way we're all getting stronger and better around all of these things. I'm also really cautious about leaning too heavily on certain academic papers
Yeah.
because a lot of this stuff is done with a very narrow gaze in order to prove a point
Yeah. Yeah, of
science.
course. Yeah.
And so
And
we need to be
yeah.
cautious about relying too heavily on a scientific premise saying that because science says this, then we can't do that anymore.
Yeah, of course. And Ken,
So,
besides this book, what is a great book to read for law enforcement trainers? Be
well, if you want to dazzle the academics,
Oh yeah, yeah. I've
this,
got
this
yeah,
well, and Mackie Haberfeld, who wrote this book with me, basically came to one of my classes. She was the chair of criminal justice studies at John Jay College, and she said, "You got a great program, but academics aren't going to believe it because you're not an academic. How about we write an academic book together?" I go, "Okay." And so she did
yeah,
all of the heavy lifting
yeah,
on this book. Mackie is incredible, but she took a lot of the principles from Training at the Speed of Life
yeah. I know
and,
it's
and added
yeah,
an academic spin to it. So this will get your academics thinking. There is dynamic gunfighting. If I've got that. Some of the psychological stuff of that. Anything Grossman wrote, of course.
yeah,
Deadly Force Encounters, the latest version by Alexis
yeah.
Ortwell is really good.
What is the
Um,
best? What is the best book for people who want to start in NLP?
ooh, anything by John Grinder and Richard Bandler.
Anything.
So, yeah, if you Google Bandler
Yeah,
NLP, all of the early books, Frogs into Princes, Using Your Brain for a Change, the Hypnotic Patterns of Milton Erickson, some of the brain stuff. Again, a great book as a trainer. Make it stick. Yeah, this is how I read
yeah,
books, by the way.
yeah. So this is your book, by the way. It's also the same.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm going,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So Eric's paying attention.
Yeah.
Anything by Rob Gray, the
Yeah.
the how we learn to move. So the
Yeah.
the ecological dynamics
Yeah.
stuff comes out of that. Go to the Trainers Podcast,
Yeah.
Chris Butler's Trainers
Wow.
Podcast,
Yeah.
Trainers
Yeah.
Bullpen podcast, because he's interviewed all of the
Great.
scientists, and he makes so much of that stuff relevant. And the methods of instruction course that he developed, he
Yeah.
teaches it around the world as the methods of instructor course through Raptor and through Force Science
Yeah.
in America. If you're a trainer, you got to get to that class. And so there's
So
a lot of the
great, Ken.
dynamic gunfighting. If I can find Dynamic Gunfighting by Mike Ox.
Ah,
Yeah, Mike Ox is another great trainer that takes a lot of the scientific stuff and makes it really relevant. He's got if you're switching to red dots right now, he's got a great book called Red Dot Mastery that just came out. In fact, I think he's teaching an online program for that today.
great.
So there's so many things on the recommended reading list.
Yeah.
I
Stay
feel so
curious. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you've been chasing me for a while to come on this podcast,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that we finally got a chance
Yeah.
to.
It's incredible. And can you please summarize one more time that great end pitch? Because now I asked some questions, but 6 o'clock news training. What was that?
6 o'clock news ready in the Temple of Awesome. Our job as trainers is to take the gift of their vulnerability and galvanize it into something that's undefeatable. And if we think that it's our job to crush them, then you're in the wrong business.
Yeah.
Absolutely in the wrong business. But that being said, I have never met a trainer ever, no matter how bad they are at what they do, that got up in the morning and thinking, I want to destroy somebody for their future
Of course
performance.
not. No.
It's just they don't know what they're doing.
No.
And so if you find yourself under the tutelage of folks like that, leave.
Yeah.
There's there's a lot of well-intentioned, charismatic, bad trainers out there
Yeah.
that need to find new ways to do what they're doing. And fortunately, we've got a lot of science wrapped around that now. So 6 o'clock news ready is my end state. And um, if there's any questions, I am accessible.
Yeah.
If anybody,
Well, thank
I'm
you so much, Ken, for those 2 hours of talking, and we could go on for more hours.
it
We,
went
we will
fast.
we will end this session, and then we can have a little after talk. So for all those people listening, there is a lot. I think I have a week or more to work out all the show notes and topics, but there are so many profound insights and experiences. Thank you so much, Ken, and
Thank
hope
you
to
so
see you
much.
again.
All right.